Welcome to SRA 221. In this video, we will be discussing single sign-on technology. As we have discussed in previous lectures, the idea of password-based authentication is that the user will type a username and password that he or she needs to authenticate to a server. This information is then matched with the authentication information stored on the server. If the information between the user input and the server-side storage is matched, then the authentication is successful. Unfortunately, there are multiple problems with the authentication approach. Let's take a look at some of the problems. Besides security concerns related to single sign-on, there is a usability concern as well. With the web, users no longer work with just one application. Users have multiple usernames and passwords, creating multiple identities for every application that they access over the internet. This results in users not being able to remember every single username and password they create, leaving them to store their usernames and password on their computer somewhere or write it down on paper, leaving it on their desk. Likewise, on the server side, system administrators find it challenging to maintain user information in a systematic fashion. In conclusion, beyond all the security concerns with traditional authentication mechanisms, we can say that application-centric authentication approaches no longer work on the internet. Single sign-on, SSO, is a property of access control of multiple related but independent software systems. With this property, a user logs in with a single ID and password to gain access to a connected system or systems without using different usernames or passwords, or in some configurations, seamlessly sign on at each system. This method helps users link between applications in a secure fashion. Now let's take a look at an example of single sign-on. The prime advantage of single sign-on is in its name. The user only has to authenticate once in order to use multiple applications. This is typically accomplished using the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, LDAP, and stored LDAP databases on servers also called directory servers. A simple version of single sign-on can be achieved over IP networks using cookies, but only if the sites share a common DNS parent domain. For clarity, it is best to refer to systems requiring authentication for each application, but using the same credentials from a directory server as directory server authentication, and systems where a single authentication provides access to multiple applications by passing the authentication token seamlessly to configured applications as SSO. Let's take a look at some of the advantages of single sign-on authentication. First, SSO reduces password fatigue of the end user, preventing them from having to remember multiple username and password combinations. Second, it reduces time spent re-entering passwords for the same identity between applications. And last, it reduces IT costs from the user help desk calls in relation to username and password problems amongst applications. SSO shares centralized authentication servers that all other applications and systems use for authentication purposes and combines this with techniques to ensure that users do not have to actively enter their credentials more than once. What is the magic behind SSO? This is really no magic. There is just a globally accessible user token, which is composed by a user's login ID and password that is stored from a trusted source in a central database. This trusted source is linked with all of the applications that the user might carry within that domain. And of course, these users' tokens are comprised of additional information which are called identity attributes. For example, the role of the users within the organization, their location, or other attributes that are relevant to the organizations in question.